Olá, mackenzistas, sejam todos bem-vindos, uma boa tarde a todos que já estão aqui conosco. Estamos iniciando mais uma edição do Mackenzie International Campus, um programa da Coordenadoria de Cooperação Internacional e Interinstitucional da Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. Na edição de hoje, nós vamos falar sobre como financiar o seu mestrado e doutorado nos Estados Unidos com a Purdue University. E desde já gostaria de agradecer, thank you Heidi Arola and Dr. Janet for joining us today. O webinar de hoje ele será em inglês e português e mediado pelos analistas do Education USA, Davi Medeiros e o Rafael Lemos, que irão apresentar as nossas convidadas. Davi e Rafael, uma boa tarde e a palavra é com vocês.
Muito obrigado, Daiane, muito obrigado a toda a equipe da COI. Meu nome é Rafael Lemos e junto aqui com o meu colega Davi Medeiros, nós somos orientadores da rede Education USA no Mackenzie. O Education USA ele é uma rede do Departamento de Estado que tem mais de 400 centros espalhados por todo o mundo e que visam promover a educação nos Estados Unidos, oferecendo informações precisas, abrangentes e atualizadas. Aqui no Mackenzie, nós oferecemos orientações individuais, serviços de tradução e eventos com instituições dos Estados Unidos. Hoje, especificamente, nós temos conosco a Dr. Janet Beagle, que é diretora de programas de pós-graduação do Colégio de Engenharia da Purdue University. Também temos conosco a Heidi Arola, que é diretora de parcerias globais da Purdue University. E elas vão estar falando em inglês sobre oportunidades de financiamento nos Estados Unidos. Então, after this quick introduction in Portuguese, Dr. Janet, Dr. Beagle, and Heidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rafael, Daiane, David. Então, eu vou começar em português. O meu nome é Heidi Arola. Eu sou a diretora de parcerias globais, mas eu morava quase 6 anos no Brasil. Antigamente, eu era diplomata americana e então eu tive o prazer de morar no Rio de Janeiro e também em Recife. So I'm going to switch to English, but just keep in mind that during the question and answer period, if you would like to ask your question in Portuguese, it's not a problem because I do fully understand. So today we're going to be talking about how to finance your graduate studies in the United States. Many of the examples we'll be giving, of course, are coming from Purdue University because that's where both Dr. Beagle and I work. So I did want to give you kind of a high-level overview of Purdue University first. Let's go to the next slide. So where is Purdue? We are located in the Midwest of the United States, about 2 hours from Chicago and about 1 hour and 15 minutes from Indianapolis. And we're in a pretty small town where I think oftentimes people and their families and their parents feel very comfortable sending their children because it's perceived to be a very safe community. Our crime rates are much lower and our cost of living is a lot lower than the big cities. Next slide. So here's just a photo of Chicago, which you can take a Greyhound bus or a train and be in the city within 2 hours. And then I just have several pictures that I'd like to show you of campus, just to give you a feel for what Purdue University is like. Next. So here is a picture of our engineering fountain and our main quad. And then on the right-hand side, you see Discovery Park, which is an interdisciplinary research park with about 13 different interdisciplinary centers and institutes. So this year we have a record 49,000 students, and that comprises about 37,000 undergraduate students who are pursuing their bachelor's degrees, and about 12,000 graduate students who are pursuing master's and PhD degrees. We were recently ranked number 3 public university in the United States. I believe that was the Wall Street Journal ranking. Next. So here's just a few of pictures of our Armstrong Hall of Engineering. This is kind of the lane and the bike path that takes you into our engineering section of campus, which of course is very popular amongst students from overseas. Here's an aerial view, and you can even see our stadium. We're very well known. We're called the Boilermakers, have a very active and I think usually pretty successful basketball team and football team. So many of our students enjoy participating and watching group sports. We even have an airport, by the way. I guess I should have pointed that out. However, if while you're a student, you would have the option to take classes and become a pilot. There are no longer commercial flights coming in, but we hope that that will change soon. And here's another picture of another fountain that we have on campus. Some of our science buildings and math buildings, and also some engineering in the background, but just want to give you sort of a feel for what our campus is like. Very green, very open, very pedestrian friendly. This is called the Wilmuth Active Learning Center, which was built just a couple of years ago. We really apply the flipped classroom approach at Purdue, and this building is very indicative of that. There are many different classrooms within this building that have facilities and equipment that allow students and professors to have very active engagement in their learning. Not a very, traditional style where the professor lectures, but where the students come to class having already read the material and then leading the discussions and having more active participatory classes. Next slide. So here's just another day in the life. I think a couple weeks ago before graduation, our campus looked much like this, a fun fountain in the center where many students like to run through the water. Next. The Bechtel Innovation Center, all kinds of amazing equipment that students can use, like 3D printers, other laboratories where you can sign up for time to make prototypes of your designs and so forth. And our recreation center facility is really world renowned. We even have an indoor climbing wall, Olympic-sized pool, and all students are able to use these recreation facilities free of charge. And just finally, the gate to Purdue. So a few statistics now. You might know that we're known as the cradle of astronauts. The first and last man on the moon went to Purdue University. And 24 NASA astronauts have graduated from Purdue. We're also known to have about 1/3 of all space flights have Purdue astronauts on board. International Purdue, I showed you earlier that we're sort of in a small community in the Midwest, although with great access to the cities, but we're very international. So we have almost 50,000 students, and we're in the top 10 out of 4,500 US universities in terms of international students. So right now we have about 9,000 international students from 130 different countries. And Brazil is now the 6th largest population. I'm very proud of that because last year, or the 2020 statistics, we were 7th, or Brazil was 7th, and Brazil has moved up to 6th. So we hope that Brazil will continue to send more and more students, and will be even higher in the rankings in terms of our international students from Brazil. So there are 148 students, 101 undergraduates, and 47 graduates. And we also have 44 visiting scholars, faculty, and researchers from Brazil. And the last time this number was calculated a few years ago, we are the #1 US institution for international enrollment in STEM. Next slide. And then I'll finish by mentioning a few things about Brazil and Purdue. We really have a very long history of collaboration. We've been collaborating since the 1950s and helped set up the University of Viçosa's graduate programs. Since that time, it was the first international engagement that Purdue had with any country was with Brazil. And in fact, the Brazilian ambassador to the United States, Nestor Forrester, was just here in March and spoke to our students and was very excited to hear about this very long history. We do have 2 opportunities I'd like to mention. If you're a student taking part today, you might keep your eyes open for the next copies Purdue Agriculture PhD Fellows Program call, and that includes agricultural and biological engineering if you happen to be interested in engineering. And the Copies and Purdue have worked together to fund the 5-year fellowship for PhD students. And the other thing is, if you're a professor listening today, we now have an MOU with Fulbright. And so there's going to be a call coming up in June for agricultural economics, and we'll be looking for a Brazilian professor to spend a semester at Purdue. So far we had Professor Marcelo de Lemos from ITA. This fall, Professor Gustavo Borba from Unicinos will be coming, and this is a 10-year agreement. So we look forward to welcoming many Brazilian professors in the years to come. And I'll stop there and pass the word to Janet.
Hi, thank you, Heidi. And hello, everybody. Sorry, it took me a moment to get my microphone unmuted there. But I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk with all of you today about financing your graduate education in the United States. And this is a really big topic. I could easily talk for several hours on this topic, but what I really want to do today is share a few of what I think are the most important points for you to be aware of. And then I'm going to leave you with a variety of resources, some websites and some video information that you can look at after the presentation today and learn more as well. But one of the biggest points I like to always make when I'm talking about graduate school funding is that there is money available. Some students aren't aware that there is different types of funding available at the graduate. And when we talk about graduate, we're talking about master's and PhD students. Here at Purdue, about 70% of Purdue's full-time graduate students receive funding. And so when we're talking about funding, there are two of the most common types are fellowships, which is the same thing kind of as scholarships. This is considered free money. This is money that's awarded to the most competitive and top students that are coming to Purdue. If you're able to earn a fellowship, this is something that's very important to list on your resume and to be very proud of. And often these are when you talk about a full fellowship, they are multiple year long types of offers that you get that will fund your entire graduate education. These can be either internal, which means that they come from the university itself. So here at Purdue, we have a variety of fellowships that we give every year to our top students that are coming to Purdue. There's also what we call external fellowships, and these are fellowships that come from outside sources. So they can be coming from government, they can be coming from professional agencies or organizations. And these are fellowships that you apply for separately. And if you receive one, then you can then take that fellowship and use it at the institution of your choice. Some fellowships have different types of requirements. There's a lot of variety among them. Some of them may have work or other expectations as part of them. So it is really important when you're applying for different fellowships that you are aware of what are the eligibility and what are some of those requirements. But if you are able to receive a fellowship, that is an excellent way to pay for your graduate education. By far, the most common way to pay for your graduate education is with an assistantship. And an assistantship is basically a part-time job that you have at the university. And there's three main types of these assistantships. There's research assistantships, where you would be working with a professor on a research project, helping them with their research. There's teaching assistantships, where you help instructors in the classroom. You may be teaching a lab section, you may be holding office hours, helping to create and grade exams, but helping with all aspects of teaching. And then there's also administration or administrative assistantships. And these are positions around the university that work in the various offices or other types of miscellaneous needs that the university has. So for example, on my team, we have 3 graduate assistants that work with us that are in these administrative type roles that either help us with database support, with outreach to students, a variety of administrative type roles. If you are able to receive an assistantship, then you receive free tuition as well as a paycheck So again, these are employment. You're working part-time. Usually it's going to be about 20 hours a week. If you have a half-time assistantship, there are some assistantships that are what we call quarter time, which would be 10 hours per week. And then there's sometimes other benefits as well. So things like health insurance, paid vacation. Sometimes there are tuition reduction for spouses and things like that. So just a great way to pay for your education. So it's important to think a little bit about who is it that receives this funding. And to understand this, you have to know a little bit about the different types of graduate degrees that there are. And this is another topic. If you're not familiar already with some of these different types of graduate degrees, we have some resources out on our website I can point you to, or this is another topic that I encourage you to learn more about. But if we think about these different categories, just real briefly, PhD students are those that are pursuing the PhD. These are research degrees. They're the longest term degree. They typically take about 4 to 6 years to complete a PhD. There's thesis master's degrees, and these are master's degrees where you are doing research as part of that degree. Usually these are about 2 to 3 year degrees. There's what we call non-thesis master's degrees, and these are course-based master's degrees. So with these, you're not doing any research, but you're taking classes. You may be doing things like case studies or special projects, but you're not doing research as part of that degree. And then the last category I'll mention is what we call professional masters. And these are kind of a special category of a course-based degree that often incorporates a technical discipline along with what we call more professional skills. So just as an example, within our College of Engineering, we have an engineering management professional master's program. And so those students will take some technical engineering courses, and then they will also take business courses and other management type courses with the goal of going into a professional role within an engineering industry or company. And so depending on the type of degree that you're pursuing determines the type of funding opportunities that are available to you. And as you can see from the diagram here, the most funding is going to be available to PhD students. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why that is. But PhD students receive the most funding. And then the next category is going to be your research-based master's degrees. And these students all will have opportunities to receive fellowships as well as research assistantships, teaching assistantships, and those general graduate or administrative assistantships. They have the most opportunities to receive this funding. Here at Purdue, in the College of Engineering, which is where I reside, almost 100% of our PhD students are funded, and then about half of our master's students receive funding. The next group, as you move down here, the non-thesis masters or those course-based masters, they typically do not have fellowships open to them, and because they're not doing research, they often do not have research assistantships that are an opportunity for them. And so most of these students will be funded either through a teaching assistantship or a general graduate assistantship. Just a small percentage of them will receive those. Some of them may have employer sponsorship. So a lot of these students are ones that already work and then are working on their graduate degree alongside, or they may self-pay and pay for that themselves. And then the last category here, the professional masters, these students are not eligible for any of the university funding. And so they will usually rely on either employer sponsorship or pay for themselves to pursue these degrees. And often these professional master's degrees are an accelerated program, or they include co-op or internship experiences as part of them. And so there are students who look at that and see the value of that education, and it is worth it to them to pay for that degree, recognizing the value that they get out of it at the end. So just before I jump in a little bit more about the research assistantships, I'll talk a little more about the funding process. So when you apply to graduate school, you will automatically be considered for some funding. And so if you think about how this process works, the applications come into Purdue. It's the faculty members who review those and determine who is admitted. And then out of that pool of students who is admitted to Purdue, that top percentage is going to receive a fellowship. So the most competitive students. And here at Purdue, about 4% of our admitted students will get a fellowship. Right? So it's a very small percentage, very competitive, a very elite pool if you are part of that fellowship pool. And then the next group is, again, that largest group that is offered an assistantship. So this part-time employment where you are invited to come and work part-time at Purdue, and in return, you receive, again, that paycheck as well as free tuition and some of those other benefits. And then the last group then, once the funding has basically all been distributed, are those unfunded students. And so these were students that were competitive enough to be admitted into the program, but unfortunately there was just not enough funding to go around. And so there is that percentage of students who is unfunded at admission time. And as I mentioned before, it will be the PhD students who are funded first. Right? So as you kind of think about this flow of money, it's going to go to all the PhD students first, then those research master's students, and then those non-research master's students. So if we think about the funding process for an assistantship, and this I think also helps explain, why does the money go to PhD students first, and why is there more money for those research master's students? And it's because of where that money comes from. So the way the process works is that a faculty member or a professor will have a research idea, and they will submit a grant proposal to different types of entities. It could be a government agency, a corporation, there could be nonprofit organizations that have an issue that they are looking for solutions for. And a faculty member with expertise in that area says, hey, I have expertise in this area. I'm going to write a proposal and say, this is how I would like to research this for you and come up with a solution. If those entities then say, yes, we want to give our money to you to help us on this research project, then that faculty member has that money, and they in turn will turn around and hire you to help them actually conduct that research. That's kind of how this research enterprise works, and why, if you are a PhD or a thesis master student, you have more opportunities, because these faculty members have these grants and they are looking for you to come and work with them to help them on their research projects. Just flipping back over to the fellowships for just a minute and kind of how that process works. I mentioned before there are two main types. Those internal fellowships are those that come from the university itself. Some of those you will automatically be considered for when you apply. So as you kind of think about that triangle, when the faculty members are making their admission decisions based off of your application, they're also identifying those most competitive students to give a fellowship to. And then external fellowships are those that you apply for directly. And I'm going to give you some links at the end of this of places where you can start to look for some of these fellowships. But these will often come from, again, governments, nonprofits, professional organizations. The details of these fellowships can vary widely. So it's important to do your research and find out what's a fit for you, for your background, and for what you want to study. The other thing to be aware of is that fellowships can be full or partial fellowships. So typically a full fellowship is going to cover your tuition as well as give you a monthly stipend to live off of, and it's going to cover multiple years of your graduate study. That's what we would call a full fellowship. But there are also partial fellowships that may give you just X dollars towards your degree, where there's also different types of travel grants that sometimes places will call fellowships. So it's good to be aware of what it is you're applying for and what those benefits are. One tip that I have for you as you're thinking about fellowships is to apply about a year before you plan to start graduate school. So at that same time that you're putting together your graduate school application, because typically those are also due about a year before you want to start, you should also be applying for some of these external fellowships, or at least making sure you're looking and being aware of when those deadlines are, because a lot of the larger fellowships have deadlines in the October and November timeframe in order to start graduate school the following August. So a few tips for finding funding, and I'll wrap up with this and then leave you with some resources to look at. First, it's important to understand your particular program's funding process. So I'm giving you some generalities and things that are going to be applicable at a lot of different places and a lot of different types of majors that you may be studying. But as you're identifying programs that you want to apply to, make sure you're looking at their website and understand what type of funding do they offer and what are their particular processes that you need to be aware of. When you are applying to graduate school, there is a place on the application where it asks you if there are faculty members that you would be interested in working with. And if you are applying for one of the research-based degrees, so either a thesis master's or a PhD, it's very important that you do list some faculty members there. As part of the application process, the review committee will see that on the application, and they will actually give it to those faculty members for them to review. And that's an opportunity then for those faculty members to say, oh, this is a student that I would like to bring into my lab that I'd be interested in working with. So it's really important that you take advantage of that. Usually there is space to list 3 to 5 faculty members. So make sure you're doing your homework when you're applying, identify those faculty members and list them on your application. You also don't need to just list them and that's it. You can go one step further, and I encourage you to go one step further and reach out to the faculty members that you're interested in. You can start this process even before you apply, and then kind of during that whole process, and then even after applying, follow up with them again and let them know, hey, I just applied. I'm really interested in your research. It's important when you're having these exchanges to keep your emails very short. Faculty members are very busy, and I can almost guarantee you that you will send some emails and some faculty members will not reply to you, but please do not be offended by that. It is just because they are so busy, they receive so many emails that they often cannot reply to all of them. But sometimes, even if they don't have a chance to reply, they still may have seen your email, and that name, they remember that then later when they see your application, that can be a very positive thing. So it's always a good idea to reach out to faculty members that you're interested in, attach a copy of your resume, and keep your email very short and professional and research focused. You know, let them know that you're interested in their research, why you're interested in it, and anything that's relevant in your background as to why you would be a good fit to potentially work with them. And then here are a couple of websites, and I will share these slides afterwards, and I believe that the group here can distribute those to those who are attending. But there's some opportunities to look at for those of you who are interested in engineering. And some of the resources here are not necessarily specific to engineering, but this is something we put together for our engineering students. So most of them will be engineering focused. If you go out to our engineering website, there's some information about graduate funding and a link there to a fellowship database of all external fellowships that you can search based on your particular situation and identify fellowships that you could apply for. And then a group that hopefully you are familiar with, and if not, I strongly encourage you to become familiar with all the resources they have, and that is Education USA, and learn from them many things about the graduate application process and different opportunities that they may be aware of as well. I'd also encourage you to take a look at our YouTube channel. I have some full-length videos out there of some different past webinars that I've done on the funding topic that go into a lot more detail than what we talked about today. And then one of the last events I want to really draw some attention to is after today, some things to look forward to. And so this September, we will be holding our second annual Purdue Engineering Virtual Graduate Showcase. And so again, this is particular for those of you who are interested in engineering. This is a fully online event. It has free registration. And if you register and attend the event, you will receive an application waiver, which means that you can apply to Purdue Engineering for free. This event has a variety of workshops. We have information sessions from all of our different engineering majors. There are live poster sessions where you can, if you've done research yourself, you can actually present on your research, and we have prizes for the best posters. And then we also have a division where We have our current graduate students present some of their research, so you can come and walk virtually through those poster sessions and learn from our current graduate students about the work that they're doing. Excellent event. We just launched this for the first time last year, received a lot of very positive feedback. We're very excited about it. Strongly encourage any of you to join our mailing list on the website and then register and attend that event this fall. And then a series of links here. Again, I will share these slides out afterwards. We have a Brazilian student video that was put together by several of our students on Purdue's campus that talk a little bit about their experience, so you can get a sense of what they have to say. You can learn more about our programs, as well as more information on funding and other topics in some of our live webinars that we'll be holding this fall. You can watch for them under our prospective student events. And then don't be afraid to start your search now and start to identify some of those faculty that you might be interested in reaching out to. And you can learn more about our engineering graduate programs at that link there. So that is what I had to cover for today. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. And certainly you can feel welcome to email me. My email is on the slide here if you have questions that we don't get to today.
Thank you, Dr. Jeanette. Thank you, Heidi. Also, Heidi, you share important information in the chat, yes? Would you like to talk a little about it?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, in the chat box, I made a comment. Eu fiz comentário no chat que nos Estados Unidos não é necessário fazer um mestrado, normalmente, antes de fazer um doutorado. Muitos dos nossos programas, eu posso falar para Purdue nesse caso, mas isso aplica nos Estados Unidos todo. Você pode se aplicar diretamente para o doutorado depois de fazer a graduação. Então, só para mencionar isso.
Isso para os cursos de engenharia também.
Sim. And Janet, maybe you can comment a little bit more on that. So most courses in engineering as well, isn't that the case where you don't have to actually do a master's before you do a PhD? Several of them allow you to enter from your bachelor's.
Yes, that is true. And it does vary a little bit depending on what major or what program you want to study. But there are even a couple of disciplines that encourage you to go directly from your bachelor's degree into your PhD. So a couple examples, chemical engineering and materials engineering. It's very common for those students to go directly to the PhD. In fact, it's discouraged to go master's first and then into the PhD. And then a lot of the other disciplines give you the option of whether you prefer to go master's and then PhD, or whether you want to go directly into the PhD.
Thank you. So we have one question from Jessie. So it's only engineering courses or no financial economics master's degree?
So at Purdue, we do have both finance and economics degrees, so that is possible. I personally am from the College of Engineering, and so the programs that I work with are all engineering, and the graduate showcase that I talked about is only engineering. But we definitely do have these other degrees at Purdue. And if you go, I'll put the URL in the chat. If you go to the Purdue Graduate School website, then you can link to those programs and learn more about them as well.
And we're a comprehensive research institution with 11 colleges. So as Professor Beagle noted in the beginning, 70%, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, of all Purdue graduates get funding for graduate school. It's more than 90% in engineering. It happens to be a bit higher, and that's largely because a lot of our professors have sponsored grants, and so they have a bit more money to hire research assistants because of those industry connections. But overall, over all disciplines at Purdue and all of our colleges, about 70% of graduate students get funding.
Right, that is correct. Thank you, Heidi.
Maybe one other area to mention while we're waiting, if there's other questions. In the United States, another very unique thing is that you can do your bachelor's degree in one area, and as long as you have the right foundation, you can switch and do your master's in a completely different area. Or not completely different, but as long as you have the foundation. So in my case, I studied English, so lettres, as an undergraduate, and I also studied French as my minor. And then I switched and did a master's in international relations. So, and I have a friend who was an English teacher, and she decided that she wanted to become a doctor. So she took night classes for 2 years in biology and chemistry, and she passed the medical school examination, and she's now a medical doctor. So there's a much more flexibility in the US system as well.
That's a very important information. So thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Dr. Janet. I think we don't have any other questions. Davi, Rafael, would you like to say something?
Yeah, we just want to thank you, Heidi and Dr. Beagle, for joining us today. You gave some really good pieces of information to Mackenzie students today. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
And also thank you, Davi and Rafael, for organizing this event.
Thank you, Daiane, for having us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Daiane.
So,
Obrigada.
obrigada.
Boa tarde a todos e todas.
Boa tarde. Tchau, tchau.